I grew up in a wealthy family filled with love, respect, and fairness. No favoritism, just warmth. Our family of 5 was tightly knit. My dad, Alexander Johnson. My mum, Sophia Johnson. My older brother, Alex Jr., my sister Clara. And me, Belinda Johnson. As the last child, I was pampered with affection. My family was my world, and even a minute without them felt like torture. At age 14, everything changed. My siblings traveled abroad for their studies, leaving me alone with my parents. At first, I couldn't cope. The silence in the house was deafening. But time has a way of softening edges. I eventually got used to it. 3 years later, I gained admission into AIF Babalola University. My parents, wanting me close, didn't let me study abroad like my siblings. I didn't mind. I was home. During my first year at the university, my brother Alex returned from abroad. The excitement was electric. We'd missed him dearly. Before his arrival, Dad asked me to come home early to help plan a welcome party. There was just one problem: I absolutely hated parties. Too many people, too much noise. But I had no choice. The day finally came. Alex arrived around noon, and our excitement was off the charts. I ran to him and jumped into his arms, hugging him like a lioness reunited with her cub. I dragged him straight to the garden, where the party had been set up. "Surprise!" I yelled. He chuckled and pulled my cheeks affectionately. Just then, Dad called him aside, and they both sat down to chat. I slipped away quietly and went up to my room. I wasn't in the mood for a crowd. I spent some time watching movies on my laptop until boredom set in. Curious if the party was winding down, I tiptoed to the kitchen and peeked out the window. Nope. The party was just kicking off. I sighed, opening a cold drink and settling into a dining chair. I got lost scrolling on my phone until I sensed someone behind me. Ahem, a voice cleared his throat. Startled, I jolted upright, my phone flying from my hands like I'd been caught red-handed. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you," the voice said calmly. I looked up and froze. He was tall, with a clean-cut face and a confident charm. What was this fine stranger doing in my kitchen? "I'm John Mackind," he said, walking over to the sink with a drink in hand. "I'm Linda Johnson," I replied, still unsure whether to breathe or blink. He turned sharply. "Wait, you're Alex's sister?" His tone made it sound more like an accusation than a question. I nodded slowly. "Alex never mentioned you. I thought Clara was his only sister." I smiled. "Well, here I am." He chuckled. "Nice meeting you." "The pleasure's mine," I replied. "So, why aren't you outside?" I gave a small shrug. "I hate parties." His eyes widened. "Wow. What planet are you from?" He laughed loudly. I frowned slightly. "I just don't like crowds." His laughter faded. He pulled out a chair and sat beside me. "Mind if I keep you company?" I looked at him and smiled. "Not at all." That moment sparked something. We talked for hours, learning so much about each other. Before he left, we exchanged numbers. And just like that, a new chapter began. 2 weeks after resuming school, my brother traveled back abroad to continue his course. Before he left, I visited home every weekend just to see him off properly. One day I was in my room chatting with friends when my phone rang. I rushed to pick it up, but froze when I saw the caller John. I had completely forgotten he existed. Still, I picked up. "Hello? Hi, this is John." "I know," I replied flatly. It's really nice hearing your voice again," he stammered. I rolled my eyes. "Same here." The conversation was brief and awkward, but later that night, we exchanged BBM pins and started chatting again. That one call turned into daily texts, nightly calls, and soon we became best friends. We were inseparable. If a day passed without hearing from each other, it felt like something was missing. Emotionally, we're hooked and we knew it. Then one evening, John called and said, "Linda, there's something I need to tell you." I already knew where this was heading but played along. He hesitated, then gathered courage and asked, "Will you be my girlfriend?" Without thinking, I said, "Yes." That moment marked the beginning of a love story that felt like heaven on earth. Though we were in different cities, distance didn't stop us. I was in love deeply. And for the first time, it felt like someone truly saw me. 2 months passed without seeing each other, so John suggested I visit for the weekend. At first, I refused. I'd never traveled alone, let alone to a guy's house. But my heart wanted to see him. So, I lied that I was unwell and got permission to leave school early. When I finally got to his place that evening, I was exhausted. But the moment I saw him, my tiredness disappeared. He looked even more handsome than I remembered. I wasn't sure whether to hug him or just wave. But he made the decision for me. He pulled me in so tightly, I felt my ribs scream. He welcomed me warmly. I remembered my mother's advice. Never stay alone with a guy. But John proved to be a gentleman. We shared the same bed that night, no funny business. Just company and laughter. On Sunday, I returned to school. But from that moment, whenever we had a break, I visited John before going home. It became our little routine. Then came that night. We had gone out and returned late. We were lying on the bed in silence. Then suddenly, John leaned in and kissed me. I kissed him back. My heart was racing. The part of me wanted it. And the part that didn't speak up. That night, I lost my virginity. Afterward, John held me and whispered, "I'll never leave you." I believed him, I trusted him. I felt safe. Weeks passed. I returned to school, and we continued our long-distance relationship. But something began to change. School got busier. I wasn't calling as often. And then, John changed. He stopped calling. When I called, he barely picked. And when he did, his voice felt cold, distant. I was worried, confused, and scared. The warmth we shared was fading. I couldn't focus. I stopped sleeping. I fell sick. My roommates grew concerned and took me to the university health center. They ran tests. I waited anxiously. Then the nurse walked in and said, "You're pregnant." Time froze. My mind spiraled. What am I going to do? How will I tell my parents? Will John step up or vanish? I held on to hope that this news would pull John closer, that he'd remember what he promised. I didn't tell him on the phone. I wanted to look him in the eye. 3 days later, I traveled to his place unannounced. As I reached his doorstep, I heard his voice inside. He was home. I smiled. At least he's in. I stood there, rehearsing my lines. Then, I took a deep breath and opened the door. What I saw shattered me. I stepped into the house and froze at the sight before me, John, and a lady entangled in an unmistakably romantic moment. My heart stopped. Everything spun. The shock was too much. Darkness swallowed me whole. The next thing I knew, I was lying on a hospital bed. The beeping machines, the white walls. It all felt surreal. As my eyes fluttered open, tears streamed uncontrollably. Then the door creaked open. John walked in, followed by a doctor. There was no need for explanations. The doctor's words said it all. "You're stable now, Mom. You're ready to be discharged." I didn't utter a word. I simply got up, numb, and walked out. John offered to drive me home. I sat in silence the entire way. The lady was gone by the time we arrived. I entered a room and collapsed into sleep. Not from peace, but from exhaustion. The next morning, I left for school. As soon as I arrived, I was summoned to the head of department's office. He handed me a letter without saying a word. My hands trembled as I opened it. Expulsion. The news had reached them. No point begging. What's done was done. Back in my room, I stared into space, stunned. In less than 24 hours, my life had completely unraveled. John. The hospital. Expulsion. How would I break this to my parents? I packed my things and made my way home. As the gate came into view, my heart pounded wildly. I knocked, and the gate man opened with a concerned look. "Are Daddy and Mummy home?" I asked. "Yes," he replied hesitantly. I stepped in and opened the door to find them seated in the living room. My legs almost gave way. "Good afternoon," I stammered. "Who told you to enter this house?" Dad's voice thundered. Double quotes, "Dear. Please take it easy," Mum pleaded gently. But Dad was unmoved. "The school called. They told us everything." He stood. "Young lady, pack your things and leave my house." No, this couldn't be real. First John, then school. Now this? "Alex, she's our daughter. We can't throw her out like this," Mum begged, kneeling beside him. "My word is final," he snapped and stormed away. Mum turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Belinda, who is responsible for the pregnancy?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. I was broken. How did I let one man destroy everything I had? Without waiting for my response, she stood and walked into the room Dad had entered. Moments later, raised voices pierced the silence. "She must leave. I won't tolerate this kind of disgrace in my house." Dad yelled, "She's just a child, Alex." "Child? Woman, don't provoke me." He growled and burst out of the room. I straightened myself instinctively. "You're still here?" He snapped. "Be gone before I return." Then he left, slamming the door behind him. He didn't look like the man who raised me. Where had his love gone? Mum came out moments later, wiping her tears. "Belinda, go and bring the man responsible. That's the only way I can help you." She handed me a bundle of money, her hands trembling. I took it wordlessly and left. I could only think of one person. John. But will he accept me now? I arrived at John's place that evening, exhausted, mentally and physically. Without knocking, I opened the door and stepped in. There they were, John and her, the same lady, relaxing in the sitting room like a happy couple. They both turned and stared at me like they'd seen a ghost. I took slow, deliberate steps toward them. "What happened to knocking?" "You lack courtesy," the lady snapped. "Anyway, what are you doing here again?" I ignored her, turned to John and said, "My parents threw me out. Because of you. I have nowhere else to go." John just sat there. Silent. The lady rolled her eyes and stormed off into the room. John followed her without saying a word, leaving me alone. Minutes later they returned. "You're welcome to stay," John finally said. "But the only room available is the store. If that's not okay, there's nothing I can do." He paused and added, "This is Arewa, my fiancé." I felt something in me shatter. I couldn't even bring myself to cry. He had moved on. So quickly. Clearly he didn't care anymore. So, I swallowed the pain and nodded. There was no point explaining that my parents wanted him to come and take responsibility. I couldn't go back home. I had to take whatever shelter he offered. I picked up my bags and entered the store. It was dusty, cramped and cold. He had placed a small bed there. I sat down and stared at the ceiling. My thoughts were racing. I didn't even realize when sleep took over. The next morning, I woke up to find John gone for work. Arewa and I were alone in the house. My stomach rumbled. I headed to the kitchen to grab something, anything. Suddenly her voice thundered from behind. "NN. Who gave you the right to enter my kitchen?" I turned, startled. She stood at the door, eyes blazing. "I was just hungry," I said quietly. "I thought I could get some food." "Which food?" "The one your ancestors left here. If you're hungry, go back to your father's house." She hissed and stormed off. Life under the same roof as Arewa was unbearable. She shouted over every little thing. And John? He acted like I was invisible. He stood by her every time, even when she was clearly wrong. I stayed silent. I endured. Then came one morning. I was 7 months pregnant. I woke up early to cook. The baby made me constantly hungry. Arewa walked into the kitchen and lost it. "Didn't I tell you to stay out of my kitchen, you this prostitute?" "Arewa, please, I'm not in the mood today." "Oh, so now I'm the troublemaker." She shouted and slapped me. I snapped and slapped her back. Suddenly, she began to cry, loudly. John rushed in. "What happened?" She slapped me. "I only came to help," she lied through her teeth. I stepped toward her, trying to defend myself. But before I could say a word, John grabbed a pot and hurled it at me. I dodged it. It hit Arewa. She collapsed. John rushed her to the car and sped off. I stood there in shock. He returned after some time, eyes burning with fury. "When I get back, I don't want to see you in this house," he said coldly. And then he left. I stared at the empty doorway, my heart pounding. Leave? But where will I go? I sat quietly in the living room, lost in thought. My heart was heavy as I tried to think of another option, any alternative, but nothing came. Maybe if I apologize to him, he'll listen. I just hope he does, I whispered to myself. It was already late when John and Arewa returned. They walked in holding hands, laughing as if nothing else existed. Their joy felt like salt on an open wound. Still, I gathered my courage, stood up, walked toward them, and knelt down. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling. They exchanged glances and burst into laughter. "Get up, Linda," John said, trying to suppress a grin. I stood, confused, staring at them. Then he dropped the bomb. "Arewa is pregnant," he said, pulling her close and planting a kiss on her cheek. I forced a smile. "Congratulations." But deep down, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I still love him, but I have to move on. For now, I need him to let me stay. Almost like he read my thoughts, he said, "You're forgiven. You can stay." "Thank you," I mumbled and quietly returned to the room. Life resumed, but nothing felt normal. Arewa returned to her usual harsh self. And I did everything to avoid trouble. I took up all the chores, cooking, cleaning, laundry. John wouldn't let her lift a finger, not even to pick up a pin. 2 months later, I gave birth to a baby boy. He became my light in that dark house. My joy. My companion. Yet, sadness lingered. I didn't want him growing up in such a toxic environment. I vowed to give him everything he needed, even if it meant begging with my pride in my hands. Weeks later, John hosted a party. He planned to propose to Arewa. I helped with the arrangements, decorating the house and ensuring everything was perfect. But when the party began, I quietly slipped into my room. I didn't want to watch. Still, curiosity got the best of me. I sneaked into the kitchen and peeked from behind the door. Just in time. John raised his glass and called for everyone's attention. Then he knelt down and proposed to Arewa. She gasped, said yes, and kissed him passionately. The room erupted in applause. I stood frozen. Tears welled up in my eyes and silently trickled down my cheeks. For the first time, I admitted it, I was jealous. It should have been me, I thought. I sat in the kitchen, lost in memories of how I had met John. I was so deep in thought that I didn't notice someone walk in. Ahem. A voice cleared his throat. I blinked, unsure if I was imagining it. "Hello, young lady. Can I get a glass cup?" The voice said again, more gently. I looked up, startled. A stranger stood there, smiling at me, and just like that, something shifted. I sat in the kitchen, lost in memories of how I had met John. "Are you okay?" he asked. Yes, I'm fine." "I'm sorry. What do you need, sir?" I replied quickly, trying to compose myself. For a brief moment, I thought it was John. My heart skipped. Could this be a second chance, I wondered. "I need a glass cup," he said, pulling me out of my thoughts. I stood up, grabbed a cup, and handed it to him. He placed it on the table, poured himself a drink, and sat down, scrolling through his phone like he owned the place. His presence made me uneasy. I didn't want company. I wanted solitude. I kept stealing glances, hoping he would leave. Are you the maid? He asked suddenly. No, I replied, a bit too sharply. I looked down at myself, suddenly self-conscious. Did I really look like one? So why aren't you at the party? He continued. That question hit hard. John had once asked me the same thing. I don't like parties. Too crowded, I replied with a small smile. That's weird. Anyway, I'm Carl. I'm Linda. Nice to meet you. My pleasure. We chatted casually for a while. It felt strangely familiar and unexpectedly easy. I was so lost in the conversation that I didn't notice John enter the kitchen. The moment he saw Carl and I talking, his face dropped. That look, it was the same as when we first met. John invited Carl to join the party, and he left without asking for my number. I didn't offer mine either. Relationships were the last thing on my mind. Or am I destined to meet Mr. Right in the kitchen? I thought and chuckled to myself. A week later, Carl visited again. John had taken Arewa for her antenatal checkup. So it was just me and my son, who was fast asleep. Carl and I chatted as he waited for John. Linda, where do you work? Oh, I'm still job hunting, I lied. I'm a medical doctor, he said, sipping the drink I served him. I really enjoyed our last conversation. You're a very intelligent woman. I like that, I blushed. Thank you. Before he left, we exchanged numbers and stayed in touch. Carl became a good friend. I had moved past John, but I wasn't looking for love. Not again. One day, Carl invited me over. I declined. He didn't push. Instead, he suggested we meet at a small lounge, and I agreed. I dug out something decent from my old wardrobe, but nothing fit like it used to. I carried my son and left to meet him. Carl's eyes widened when he saw me with a baby. Are you married? He asked. No, I replied. Then, whose baby? Mine, I said, suddenly realizing I'd never told him about my child. I must have forgotten, I thought. He asked a few more questions and I found myself telling him everything, my entire story. I can't believe John was that heartless, he said. I simply nodded and smiled. Maybe this would keep Carl from asking for anything more. No one wants a single mother, right? At least not seriously. Relationships were off the table. We talked, ate, laughed, and left. But our friendship deepened. Carl visited often and took my son and me out parks, small eateries, anywhere fun. People assumed he was the baby's father. And he never corrected them. Then one day Carl asked me to be his girlfriend. I said no, not because I didn't feel something, but because I was scared. I didn't want to end up hurt again. Eventually, I gave him a chance. I can't be single forever, I told myself. Still, I guarded my heart. But Carl's love grew stronger by the day. One day, he said his mother wanted to meet me. My heart skipped. John had never even hinted at such seriousness. Could this be real? I wondered. We picked a date and went together. His mother welcomed us in, but her eyes kept drifting to my son. Whose child is this? She finally asked. He's mine, I replied. What? She screamed. You want to marry a single mother? Not while I'm still alive. Carl sat up and frowned. I felt like fire was burning beneath me. My pants were soaked. Was it sweat or did I pee myself? I wasn't sure. I didn't even care. I straightened like someone summoned to face a disciplinary panel, staring at both of them with unease. I was that uncomfortable. If only the ground would open and swallow me, I thought. If only I had seen this coming. Mum, what's wrong with marrying a single mother? Carl asked gently. Shut up, what do you know? She snapped, her voice sharp and unforgiving. She rose suddenly and turned to me like she was ready to lash out. Our eyes met unfortunately. Hers were red, wild, like someone drunk on vodka. She locked eyes with me, and in that split second, I felt her fury crawl under my skin. Without thinking, I broke the gaze and looked away. Then she stormed out of the room. What an unfortunate person I am, I thought, though her exit gave me a small sense of relief. But it didn't last. Tears streamed down my face, unstoppable. I wished truly that I had never come into this world. I stood up abruptly and made for the door. I've overstayed my welcome, I thought. Was there ever a welcome to begin with? Linda, please don't go, Carl said, standing up to grab my arm. His eyes were filled with confusion and guilt. I turned to him with a faint smirk. If your mother doesn't approve, this can't work, I said quietly and walked away. Carl followed, apologizing. He shouldn't. This is all my fault, I thought, as I approached the gate. Oh, my baby. Just as I stepped out, I realized I'd left him behind. That small, innocent soul. I rushed back in to pick him up, hoping Carl's mother was still locked in her room. Back home, I collapsed into a chair feeling like a complete mess. What have I gotten myself into? For a moment, I looked at my baby and felt regret, a sharp pang of resentment. I saw him as a burden, but I didn't have the heart to act on that thought. It wasn't his fault. It was mine. I cried like a baby all through the night. Carl kept calling. I never picked up. He came by. I never answered the door. He texted that he might end his life if I continued ignoring him, but it didn't move me. Not after what I had faced with his daredevil of a mother. Then, one morning, while I was in the kitchen making breakfast, my phone rang. It was a strange number. Who could this be? I wondered. I answered but said nothing. I wanted to hear the voice first. Linda? The voice said hesitantly. Yes, I stuttered. This is Carl's mother. My breath caught in my chest. Carl's mother? I froze. Should I hang up? Or just let the phone slip from my hand? 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. How did she get my number? Why does she sound worried? What happened? Is Carl okay? Please, have you seen Carl? She asked, her voice trembling. Carl? No, where is he? I replied, forgetting we were both clueless about his whereabouts. I mean, what happened? I quickly corrected myself. My baby is missing and it's all your fault. She broke into tears. How is it my fault? I thought. Madam, are you looking for your son or here to throw blame? I asked, trying to stay calm. What really happened? She sniffled. He left a note. Said he'd end his life if I didn't accept your relationship. I haven't seen him since yesterday. Her voice cracked. Please, is he there with you? No, Ma, I responded sharply, hiding the storm inside me. He did that because of our love. No man has ever done that for me. I smiled faintly at the thought. Please, if you see him, tell him to come home, so we can iron the whole thing out. Okay, Ma, I said and hung up, my mind spinning. What does she want to iron out? Is she finally ready to accept me as her daughter-in-law? I immediately tried Carl's number, but it wasn't reachable. God, please keep him safe for me, I prayed aloud. Somehow I felt he was okay. Maybe just trying to make his mother worry. A month passed without hearing from Carl. I was losing hope. I often sat alone, wondering if his mother had found him and pushed him towards someone else. The knock came again. I rushed to the door and opened it. There stood Carl and his mother. Carl! I cried and hugged him tightly, forgetting she was there. I'm glad you're okay, I whispered. I thought I had lost you, he said, running his hand through my hair. His mother cleared her throat. Good morning, Ma. Please come in, I said nervously. The last time we met, she didn't even want to see my face. Why is she here? They both came in and sat. I offered them drinks, then picked up my baby and sat beside Carl, waiting for the purpose of this august visit. Linda, she began, I came here to tell you that I'm in support of your relationship with Carl. Really? I said, eyes wide. I dropped to my knees. Thank you, Ma. You can call me Mum. Thanks. Mum, I smiled. Carl must have convinced her. She walked over, pulled me up and hugged me. It was a little stiff cold, even, but the most important thing was she supported us. I turned to Carl. Suddenly he dropped to one knee. He pulled out a ring and held my hand. Belinda Johnson, will you be my wife? Tears filled my eyes. Yes, I shouted. He slipped the ring on my finger. I felt like the angels were singing. He kissed me, and I started feeling like a bride already. He pulled back, tickled me playfully, we laughed, forgetting his mother was even there. Let's go out and celebrate, he whispered. Yeah. I squealed, ran into my room, dressed up, grabbed my baby, and we left. We dropped his mum off and spent the day together. Months later, wedding plans were in full swing. Carl's family handled everything. But one thing was missing: my parents. They had abandoned me when I needed them most. I tried convincing Carl's parents to skip meeting them, but they insisted. So, Carl and I decided to visit them. The following week, as we approached my old home, my hands trembled. Will they accept me? Will they forgive me? Carl tried to calm me. We parked a few houses away and walked up. A new gateman answered. Good afternoon. Please, we want to see Olga and Madame, I said. From where? He asked. I'm their daughter. He went in and returned with a young, tired-looking pregnant woman. Good afternoon, she said. We're here to see Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I explained. Oh, they don't live here anymore. Mr. Johnson sold the house to my husband. What? Why? Where did they go? My voice trembled. Carl held my hand. I'm sorry. I don't know, she said and walked away. I stood frozen. Where are my parents? I whispered, then burst into tears. It's okay, honey. We'll find them, Carl assured me. Find them? How? Eventually, I discovered they had relocated abroad. They didn't even try to find me. Carl's parents said we should proceed with the wedding without them. I tried to stay joyful, but their absence lingered in my heart. A few weeks to the wedding, Carl introduced me to Debbie, a brilliant event designer. She made everything easier. Soon, we were married. It felt like a dream. Over 300 guests showed up. I felt loved. I felt seen. Carl gave me a new life. I enrolled at Unilag to study accounting. He got me a driver and a maid to ease my burden. Every day, I woke with purpose. Arewa later had her baby. We attended the naming ceremony together. When we walked in, it felt like a runway. Arewa and John couldn't take their eyes off me, transformed. empowered, loved. We left shortly after. Our marriage was peaceful and full of joy. We resolved our conflicts like mature people. Then one day, my phone rang. It was John. "Hi Linda. What do you want?" I asked. "I want my son," he said. I froze. John must be joking, Carl said firmly after I told him about the call. "I'll fight this to any length," he added, his tone rising with resolve. "Why is all this happening now?" I murmured, anxiety etched on my face. Carl pulled me into his arms. "Don't worry, my love. No one is taking our son from us. I'll fight with my last breath." Carl decided to visit John to understand why he was suddenly demanding custody. When he arrived, the sight that greeted him was heartbreaking. John was slumped in a chair, surrounded by empty bottles. The house reeked like a bar. He looked nothing like the man we used to know. "John, what's going on? Where's Arewa?" Carl asked as he snatched a bottle from his hand. John tried to resist, but he was too drunk to put up a fight. "Why are you here? Did you bring my son?" John slurred. "John, this isn't you." "Arewa, Arewa," Carl shouted, heading toward the hallway. "Don't bother looking for her," John muttered bitterly. "I sent her packing." "What? You did what?" "Why?" Carl asked, stunned. "She lied to me." John's voice cracked as tears welled in his eyes. He reached again for the bottle, but Carl stopped him. "Lied to you? About what?" Carl asked gently, now holding John in comfort. "A few weeks ago, Junior fell sick. He needed blood. I offered to donate. The doctor ran the usual tests first. But when he came back," John's voice trailed off as the pain overwhelmed him again. "John, take it easy. He told me. Junior is not my son." Carl froze. "What?" "I asked Arewa, and she confirmed it," John continued, sobbing uncontrollably. "My God, how could she do that?" Carl said, his face filled with disbelief. "That's not even the worst part." John choked. "Junior died. Arewa couldn't reach his real father in time. My boy is gone, Carl. He's gone. What did I ever do to deserve this?" Carl sat down, stunned. For a while neither of them spoke. Finally, Carl said, "This is devastating, but it's not the end of your life. You can get through this. Please don't give up." Carl stayed a while, cleaned up, made food, and helped John shower. Before leaving, he gently pleaded, "John, please, let us be. Let us raise our son in peace." When Carl got home, he looked weighed down by sorrow. I could sense something was wrong. "Are you telling me Junior is dead?" I asked, unable to believe it. "Yes," Carl said softly. "What a pity." I shook my head and asked sharply, "So, did you tell him to back off our son?" I was more concerned about protecting my child than sympathizing with John's pain. "I did. Let's hope he does," Carl said. But John didn't stop. A few days later, he filed a case against Carl and me. We were summoned to appear in court the following month. When I heard the news, I burst into tears. "Why is John doing this to us?" I cried. Carl pulled me close. "Don't worry. We'll sort this out. I know a brilliant lawyer. He practiced abroad and just returned. We're meeting him on Monday." That Monday, Carl and I went to meet the lawyer at a restaurant. But nothing could have prepared me for the shock of my life. It was my brother, Alexander Johnson. "Alex," I gasped. "Linda." He rushed forward and pulled me into a tight embrace, tears streaming down his cheeks. All at once, it hit me. How did I not see this coming? Carl is John's friend. John is Alex's friend. Of course Carl would know Alex. God, how could I have been so blind? I thought, stunned. Carl simply stood there, watching the emotional reunion unfold. "Linda, where have you been?" Alex asked, pulling away just enough to look at me. "Mum said you left and never came back. We searched everywhere." "I was with John," I said quietly, my face shadowed with pain as old memories returned. He looked stunned. "You mean John was responsible for the pregnancy? No one knew. If I had any idea, I would have come for you immediately." A small smile broke through my sadness. "I'm married to Carl now," I said, proudly reaching for Carl's hand. Then he turned to Carl and smirked. "Well, brother-in-law, I guess you'll have to respect me even more now." They shared a warm hug. "I've missed you, buddy," Alex added, patting Carl's back. Then he turned to me again, his voice softer now. "Linda, I'll help you with everything you're going through, but first you have to come home. Come see Mum and Dad. We moved to Lekki before travelling out. Mum's been heartbroken ever since you left. The house hasn't felt like home without you. I missed you, kid sis. I missed our happy home." That did it. I couldn't hold back anymore. I broke down in tears and hugged him tightly, the weight of the past melting in that moment. Later that day, we drove to our old home. As Alex honked at the gate, my heart pounded. My hands trembled. We drove in and stepped out. I wasn't even thinking about the house, my mind was too full. The door burst open. "Belinda!" Mum cried, rushing toward me, tears already pouring down her face. "Is this really my Linda?" She cupped my face, touched my arms, then pulled me into her arms and sobbed. "My baby. Oh, my baby. Where have you been?" I clung to her, sobbing uncontrollably as memories came flooding back. It felt like time had stood still. Then I looked up and saw Dad standing in the doorway. Frozen, I gripped Mum's hand, my body trembling. There was a long, heavy pause. Then Dad took a step forward. My heart raced as he approached. I clung to Mum's hand like a child facing punishment. I braced myself, eyes squeezed shut, breath hitched. He stopped right in front of me. Then suddenly he broke down. His voice cracked. "Linda, my daughter, I'm sorry. I failed you. His shoulders shook. "I was cruel. I threw you out without a second thought. I don't deserve your forgiveness." I gasped. I never expected that. The words I had longed to hear were finally spoken. My knees buckled. Tears poured down my face. "I'm sorry too, Dad. I disappointed you. Please, forgive me." I fell to my knees, sobbing. He pulled me up instantly, wiping my tears with trembling hands. "No, no. You're my daughter. You always have been." Just then, a familiar voice echoed from behind. "Linda." It was Clara, my older sister. She rushed out, eyes wide. Disbelief painted across her face. "You're really back?" she whispered, then hugged me tightly. "I told Mum you'd return." I told her. We all wept tears of pain, healing and love. It was a reunion only God could have orchestrated. As we sat down, all eyes turned to the man beside me. I cleared my throat, heart pounding. "Mum, Dad, Clara, this is my husband. His name is Carl. We got married earlier this year." Their eyes widened. Then I smiled and added, "And this is Clifford, our son." Mum rose instantly and scooped Clifford into her arms, kissing his cheeks like she was making up for lost time. Carl respectfully stood and bowed, then prostrated. "Is he the one who got you pregnant?" Dad asked, his tone cautious. I couldn't help but laugh. "No, Dad, that story is long." "Good," he said with a raised brow. "Then rise, my son. Come and sit beside me." Carl looked nervous but obeyed. He sat beside Dad like he was in an interview for my hand in marriage again. I went on to explain everything. John, the betrayal, the case, the threat of losing Clifford. Mum flared up instantly. "That man is insane. No court will give him my grandson. Not while I'm alive." Dad turned to Alex, my brother. "You're taking this case personally. No negotiations." Alex gave a sharp nod. "Consider it done." In that moment, surrounded by my family, I felt untouchable. I felt safe again. A month later, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Our case was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. Carl and I sat together. I leaned against him, silently praying. His parents were there. So were mine. Minutes before the judge entered, John walked in. I froze. My breath caught. He was a shadow of himself, unkempt, disoriented, sunken eyes. Clothes crumpled like he hadn't cared for days. His shirt was mismatched, his shoes scuffed. His hair had grown out wild. He looked broken. I clenched Carl's arm. "He looks horrible," I whispered. "It Let's hope the judge sees what we see," Carl muttered. "All rise," the bailiff barked. The judge swept into the courtroom with quiet authority, taking his seat like a king on trial day. Alex introduced himself first. "Barrister Alexandra Johnson, representing Mrs. Belinda Davis." John's lawyer followed, stiff and defensive. The session began. Alex called me to the witness box. My palms were sweaty. I told everything: how John abandoned me during pregnancy, denied responsibility, and returned now, demanding what he had once rejected. When John took the stand, he cried. "I made mistakes. I didn't know. I didn't care. But I want a second chance." Alex stepped forward calmly. "Mr. John, have you ever cared for this child? Have you ever changed a diaper? Paid for formula? Held him through the night?" "No," John wept. "I didn't. I failed him." The courtroom fell silent. "Then why now?" Alex asked, voice low but firm. John crumbled. I don't know." The judge called for a recess. He invited both lawyers to his chambers. Tension, anxiety, dread. What if the judge? I couldn't finish. "Don't worry," Carl said, placing his hand over mine. "No one's taking Clifford from us." An hour later, the judge returned. Everyone sat upright. He flipped open his notes and announced, This is my judgment. My breath caught. The boy Clifford shall remain with his mother, Mrs. Belinda Davis. A wave of relief crashed over me. As for Mr. John, the judge continued, you may visit under Belinda's supervision. Court, the bailiff yelled. As everyone rose, John collapsed. Security rushed to him. But I was numb. He no longer held power over me. The next day, word came John had been admitted to the hospital. He was battling emotional distress, possibly addiction. Carl and I paid him a visit before we travelled. He was asleep when we arrived. I walked to his bedside, looked at the man who once held my heart and nearly shattered my life. I forgive you, I whispered. Then I left. The next day, we boarded our flight abroad. I resumed my studies, got a job, and Carl continued in his medical line. We built a new life. Carl and I had a baby girl. We visit our family often, and they visit us. Carl remains the love of my life, till death do us part. My story. Belinda Davis. The end.